these people are morons.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to Beyond Room 313 for another symposium. I know we haven't had one in a while, but you know, all the best things, all the best packages are small, and all the best things in life are rare. And speaking of a rare board, our friend of the channel, Tina Kemp, from her own YouTube channel, Tina Kemp, if you haven't subscribed, you should, is joining me today because she suggested to talk about a topic called the Skinwalker Ranch. Now, we've all heard about it. I know about it. You know about it. And for some reason, I found it hard, both previously and getting it into it again for this broadcast, to really gel with the subject. And Tina, I think, can add some valuable insights into creating clarity, I guess, right? That'd be the best way to put it, regarding the alleged paranormal and Fortean events at the Skinwalker Ranch in Ballard, Utah. So welcome, Tina. I hope you're keeping well.
Very much. Thank you very much, by the way. My renewed interest in the topic, because we've all heard the stories about the wolf through the fence and everything. Those are old stories that have been around on the internet forever. But what sparked my interest again was the TV show Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, where the new owner of the ranch, I forgot his, Brandon something, invited a crew of people who are supposedly scientists to do experiments on the ranch to see if they can somewhat find out what the previous owner, Bigelow, found out. Because Bigelow is actually a person that is heavily involved in aerospace technology. He has his own aerospace company. He's incredibly rich. And what he found on the ranch has never been, it's never been brought to the public. He never told people what he found out there. The only thing that he ever said about it is that he's never going back there. Now, that can mean several things. That can mean that he's so thoroughly bored with it that he just lost all interest in it, but I don't actually think that is the case. But there are things about the show in itself that I believe to be absolute BS. It's very dramatic. It's very sensationalized, and that becomes irritating at a certain point because they repeat certain things a lot, like with the rockets. That just, it doesn't seem to give them any good or even somewhat friendly results. While there were other things that they did that did provoke a real response, and that seemed to be a lot friendlier than the rockets that they then didn't ever repeat, which baffles me. And I don't think that they are really wanting to find out anything. To be honest, I think this is just a TV show. But I think that if Bigelow really found something there under the mesa, that it is no longer there. Or it has been replaced by something of his own making. Because he was in the aerospace industry, and when they were drilling the hole in the mountain, they found the alloys that were on space shuttles. Well, rather than thinking that this was a space alien craft, no, this is something that Bigelow put there himself. Because why would an alien spacecraft that supposedly comes from a whole other planet have the exact same alloys on their vehicles that are found on Earth on shuttles and vessels that cannot go beyond a certain point in space? That seems illogical to me. Now, there's also another thing that happened there. Well, it's twofold, really. They say that they had microwave attacks, like directed microwaves attacking them. Now, on a human, he said, like, this guy got this bump on his head, and oh no, he had to go to the hospital and have that checked out, and that thing went away by itself. Now, the other thing that happened with the microwaves, it was directed at a cow, a calf, and that calf was seriously hurt by something. They showed it. It went blind. It had bloodshot eyes. They filmed it doing the circling around itself, really, in its meadow. It was really horrible to see. So if that was the same thing which they were saying it is, or implying heavily, that cannot be, because the human skull is a lot thinner than a cow skull, so it would actually be more vulnerable to these sort of things. And that bump that this guy had on his head, that is just a lipid. I have had them too. Those are just, hair follicles that got clogged and then they create a little bump. We get them. That is a normal thing. And that irritated me, that they make such a big deal out of things that are nothing, while the actual thing, the cow, which was horrible, I really wish I hadn't seen that. But that was way more interesting. And I don't think that they did that themselves. Something happened to that animal, which really is rather unexplainable. Now, I've also seen people, because I looked on Reddit forums about the show, people swearing up and down that that sound frequency that they kept getting a signal from is a military frequency. I don't know if that is true. Those are people on Reddit, so take it or leave it, I would say. But about the GPS that kept getting misdirected, now I looked up how a jammer works, a jammer, or something that scrams or blocks the GPS signal. That actually resulted in very similar patterns when I looked that up. So I don't know, they did say that there is a military base nearby. So I have to believe that that has something to do with that.
Yeah, I concur with everything there. I didn't see the one about the cow. I'm glad I didn't. But I find the show, like I said, obnoxious and sensationalist, with lots of jump cuts, and it's supposed to be really scary and intense. And I don't like that guy one bit. I don't know him, of course, but he reminds me of so many people I work with in business who got there by being nasty, stabbing people in the back, just being there's a darkness about him, which I find very distrusting, rather than a talent. Like he's one of these guys who sort of like backstabbed and big mouthed his way to the top, rather than actually use his talent to get to the top. And I instantly didn't distrusted him from the moment I saw him doing these kind of like in-house meetings. It reminded me of these real assholes I used to work with in business. Now, the show itself, I think, is completely fraudulent on every level. I just think, I don't know what his agenda was there, whether he was creating a theme park or was trying to think he could make money from it or something, or turn, capitalize it. They say it, they claim it's close to Area 51, but it's nowhere near it. It's nowhere near it. That's like a big thing that some people say about it, that it somehow affects it. Now, I found the original story quite interesting for lots of reasons, and we should cover that as well. So I think what we're trying to do in this thing is determine the actual possible paranormal events that happened at the Skinwalker Ranch and the TV show, because I don't think the two are really connected. I just think that the TV show is using Skinwalker Ranch as a vehicle to sell something else.
The guy, Brandon, the current owner, is actually a land developer. So that is why he didn't want people to drill or to dig into the mesa, because of course then he will have to put it back. It ruins the view for whatever he has planned there.
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
Yep. Now, just to backtrack on the story a bit, it's in an area called Ballard, in a remote area, well, semi-remote area of Utah in the United States. And there's been UFO reports going back as far as the 1970s, and stories of cattle mutilations as well, which I found kind of an interesting thing anyway. And then this family called the Shermans, who lived there at one time, said that the day they were setting up, this huge dog came in and they shot it and it attacked one of the cows. And then from that moment on, there was all kinds of UFO and all kinds of entity activity. It became into a book, and then it sort of gained prominence as the Skinwalker Ranch. Now, from what I gather, see, this is where I find a lot of this stuff weird. Skinwalkers are apparently witches within Native American culture, right? But the way they describe them, and you can't get any, they claim you can't get any information out of them. But the way they describe them is more akin to how European witches are, like shapeshifters, turning into animals and things like that. And I'm starting to think the Europeans were in that area from the 1500s on. Was it the Europeans who started what was going on there? And the natives just kind of noticed it rather than part of their native culture? Because it was 500 years ago. It's a hell of a lot of time for something to manifest.
From my very limited knowledge on the subject, the Skinwalker is actually particular to one Indian tribe only.
Navajo.
Yeah, and which is and the ranch is actually in that area. It overlaps with their with their land, and indeed there were people who took on some darker shamanic aspects in order as actually as a response to Europeans. Now, I don't know more than that. I have to be honest, I don't know anything more than that. There's so much bullshit about it on the internet also.
Well, you know, like anything else in this paranormal stuff, it's a way of making money the more you hype it up. And the show itself is the ultimate example of something being hyped to absolute astronomical levels. So let's talk about what possibly could be the real thing that you think.
Well, this I found the most interesting part of it all. That really fascinated me. First, there is the spiral on top of the mesa. Now that was, they brought in Native Americans and they said like, no, 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 our forebears put it there and we know why it's there, but we don't want to talk about it. Fair enough, I'll accept that. But when they also invited musicians to do chanting, just traditional songs, they seem to have a very positive reaction on all their equipment. It really seemed as if something was responding to it, and that had nothing to do with sending microwaves or radio waves or rockets. It had nothing to do with that. And they also started to notice with their ears movement around, like much in the same way as we would experience a fairy or a nature spirit. And they seemed genuinely creeped out by that, because yeah, that really unnerves you if you're not familiar with it. But and that frustrated me about the show. Like, you get a genuine reaction this time, why don't you go with that? It seems that sound, like actual sound waves, music, seems to provoke a reaction that you may want to look closer into, instead of sending yet another rocket up there that always gives you the same result.
Yeah. But I mean, rockets make great TV, but things like that don't. You know, when Navajos or other Indians say, and I learned this years ago, we don't want to talk about it, what they're really saying is they don't know. That's what they're really saying. It's a way of getting with, they're afraid to actually say one thing or another because it might be useful to them. But that's what they're really saying. And I think a lot of those stuff are actually pre-native anyway. A lot of these, like these earthworks and sites across America, were built by a previous civilization. Now, the thing with the show is, then again, like they have something interesting and they ignore it. They ignore it and they go back into the rockets and the sensationalism. You said something about this mineral that's needed. Can you talk more about that, this alloy, or this what they found?
Well, it was an alloy, so it was a composition of metals that they had sent to a lab, and it came back saying like, oh yeah, this is material that is found on space shuttles, and that is the only place where it is used for, to their knowledge. So yeah, of course, Bigelow put something in the ground there. He probably put it there in order to upsell the property.
Trying to make, yeah, and also probably trying to make out if it's an alloy anyway, it shouldn't occur in nature. Alloys are
It
man-made.
doesn't.
What it wasn't by any chance those ceramic tiles on the bottom of the space shuttle. That it's just like a ceramic that they use the bottom of the space shuttle tiles. And I'm wondering, because that is a really expensive alloy, and you're right, if he's pretending he has it, he's sitting on a gold mine.
He is in the aerospace industry, so he must have access to these materials. Otherwise, I don't think you can resist, because that alloy was created to resist the friction and the heating up with the atmosphere. So he must have access to that. He's also incredibly rich, so he could afford it.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, they could have hired somebody to make it, no problem. Now, another thing too is that why go to all this trouble? That's always seems to be the issue with these guys who go to all this trouble to create a story. I know he said he's already super rich, so he doesn't need the money, and there's already a hype thing to it. I've never understood why they need to go to all this length. Do you have any ideas on that?
I think that the show was a bit of a cash cow, to be honest.
Yeah.
And if they had now, it could be that he was raising money in order to develop the property further. That's possible. Maybe he wants to make it into a tourist attraction, and there's lots of regulation that you need to adhere to, lots of people you may want to buy off to give you the right permits.
This is the
That's
Indian.
how it works in Italy. But I think that there has always been an interest in the property. And I think they figured out that paranormal and Fortean subjects actually interest people way more than just another stupid TV show about wokeness.
Yeah, and also you tie aliens into it. The normies go crazy for that stuff. They love that stuff. Now here's another idea that I want to throw out there. Could it be possible that a lot of the paranormal stuff that's actually been reported there could be sort of like self-generated in a kind of a tulpa kind of way, that people have poured so much energy into this place through TV and everything and through hype over the years that they're actually manifesting this stuff.
That's very probable, actually. It's
Yeah.
like with haunted houses, eh? It never starts with the walls shaking and closets falling over. It's your reaction to these things, because every haunted house started off with something small. You hear something from over there, you see something from the corner of your eye, and all of a sudden you have this heavy emotional, almost hysterical reaction to it. You're just feeding into it, and it becomes a feedback loop that only strengthens over time. So yeah, I think that the more attention you give to it, that yeah, you're going to start seeing things, obviously. I also think that the original people, the people that were there before Bigelow got it, I think that they really experienced something, but it might as well be something by someone who just didn't like the ranch being there, and maybe that person has died. And so the activity with it has also died.
So it's like almost a poltergeist type of thing. I could definitely get down with that. The residing spirit that's there, or something, some kind of Mesoamerican kind of entity or spirit lives there or something and doesn't want them on the land. And this is like back to something that myself and Sarah have spoken about in the book and on the show, is that we're encroaching on someone's home when we go into a place like this. That if you go in, say if you have like a spiritual entity living in a place like this, you're basically moving into someone's house. And this is, you see this a lot of these awful ghost hunter shows. They go into places and they start screaming and jumping around, jump cut cameras, and that pours all kinds of energy into that from the viewers and things like that. Now, if you have a malevolent or even a neutral force, it's going to react. It's going to have no other choice but to react to this kind of like psychic maelstrom that's suddenly been put upon its quiet place. What I find so awful about all these kinds of shows is the lack of respect, the disrespect they have for what may already be living there, which is like something that's central to like paganism and all kinds of native traditions, that you respect that maybe the fairies live there, or that lives there, or this lives there, and you do not, you do not disturb it. There's almost something evil about the way these shows deliberately disturb these places.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And also when they show an interest in Native American practices, it's always focused on the bad things. Americans, which I find very strange about them, to be honest, have no problem accepting Native American practices as like, okay, it's part of their tradition, it's part of their culture. I have no problem with it. They don't call it satanic, they don't call it devil worship, they don't call it any of that. But when we, non-Native Americans, have the same approach to it, we automatically get labeled as devil worshippers, demon worshippers, Satanists, and all that.
Nutcases, yeah. But an interesting aside to that is that if you look into the history of Native American culture, a lot of it was invented by white settlers. They've had their own kind of great reset. And a lot of the things, the stereotypes like powwows and drumming and smoke signals, yes, they may have been parts of individual native tribes, but as part of a kind of a nationalization, to put it this way, of the Native Americans in American culture, they actually created a fake spiritual identity for many of these people. And this was probably a deliberate thing to kind of destroy their magic. I've often thought about that. Like, if you want to, I lived in America for a long time, and you want to know who the worst off people in America are, by far, because you just don't see them, as Native Americans. They live in absolute destitute poverty. They're a broken and destroyed people. They're not ever given a chance. You never hear when elections come around that politicians ever say we've got to do something. Have you ever heard that? And there's millions of them in America, and they're completely ignored and forgotten. And I often wondered if that's some kind of like American evangelical sort of like Puritan Christian fear of their power. I've often wondered about that. And is this a sensation around a Skinwalker ranch a continuation of that?
That's possible, I think, because I mean these communities have also one of the highest alcoholic rates
Yeah.
In the US, and that in itself can be absolutely detrimental to a person on a personal level, but spiritually that must wreak so much havoc throughout your whole community, and that in itself must attract the attention of entities that.
Yeah. And also that was initially fed in as a bioweapon. That the fire water was sent in by the Americans to actually destroy these people. It was the same way they used opium in China as a way of destroying them. They never fought back. I never thought about that, but that would bring in all kinds of entities as well. Again, the lack of respect is what gets at me. These shit. Like when I was watching the show, it was like you wanted to punch the people behind this because it's like, do you have any understanding of decorum and tact? You walk into an environment that may or may not have spiritual or paranormal resonance, and you just kick it to pieces. You make a McDonald's kind of circus out of it, and again, they also give a false impression of Fortean and paranormal events as well. You ever notice that? Like, I've never been involved in a paranormal experience like anything you'd get on that show. Ever.
No. No. The worst, it wasn't actually the worst, but the most scary thing that ever happened to me was a touch, 2 hands on my knee, just grabbing it. And that was the most physical thing that I've ever experienced, but it wasn't eventually a bad thing in the end. Nothing happened other than sort of a jump scare. But then you sit down a little bit, you calm down, and you don't hype yourself up to the point of a near panic, because what good is that going to do anyway? Yeah. If I was that spirit at the Skinwalker Ranch and I saw these morons constantly shoot rockets at me while I already told them or let them know in some way or the other that I don't like this, yeah, I'm going to be very, very pissed off.
Well, there's another thing too. I watched like 3 episodes, and by the second quarter way through the second one, I was completely bored. The show is paralyzingly boring. and they use rockets as a means to sort of like keep public interest. And even that's boring. It makes me wonder what kind of people are glued to that show week after week. Is there, I find that to me, there's no appeal to that show, none.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with popular conspiracy theory boards like Beyond Top Secret and I forgot the name of the other, Godlike Productions.
Oh yeah, I've read Godlike Productions. It's actually very funny. Yeah,
that crowd. It's absolutely that crowd. These people are morons.
I know. It's like an addiction. Have you noticed that? It's like they don't care really what it's about once they get the hype and the sensationalism. And if I often think if it's like, if a priest was given a real spiritual experience, they wouldn't really believe it. If you gave one of those guys on Godlike Productions or Above Top Secret or whatever a real paranormal experience, they wouldn't believe it because they have such a false impression of what it should be.
But they're also very set in what they want to believe. It's already they already made up their minds about everything, and it doesn't matter what you present them with. They will never ever change their mind because they want to believe what they want to believe. And they want to believe in aliens. They want to believe that the government is in league with these aliens and they are the victims of that collaboration somehow. Somehow.
Do you remember when they had this plan to invade Area 51 a few years ago? And it was like, I thought it would never happen. I thought it was just a joke, but thousands of them actually showed up thinking they were going to do it and pull alien bodies out of the bunkers, and you have these people make a lucrative living from telling them this same bullshit over and over again. Who's that guy who looks like an alien himself? Greer.
Mm.
I mean, he's never said anything in his whole life worth listening to, but
no.
they hang around him like every new thing will be some kind of cradle of like phenomenal information.
It's like David Icke. No, not David Icke, but David Wilcock.
Oh God.
That Greer guy and then that woman Linda Moulton Howe, they all follow the same script. Basically, it is basically I have been told this and this by this and that person who showed me their credential. Trust me, bro.
Yeah,
that's it. There's nothing else.
And another thing is, you must never trust the government. You must never trust what they say. NASA, never a straight answer until one of them comes forward and saying, I saw an alien, and then they trust them. The people that they say don't trust, they then trust them completely and unconditionally. They're such idiots, right?
That guy never, like that whistleblower also. The bald guy, I forgot his name, but he was called the whistleblower. But that guy never saw anything. He was basically a glorified secretary. Really.
When you look at all that stuff, it's full of it. Everything. That whole scene is full of it. If you and I had the resources and the money, we could set up we could actually find a place somewhere in the world and say it was a UFO crash site, and then pay people off to say they saw this stuff, they heard this stuff, and it would instantaneously, within no time, be accepted as absolute truth. Once it has, and the Skinwalker Ranch show has the right amount of aliens, the right kind of like landscape. They love deserts. You ever notice that? It's always very deserty, and all kinds of things. And even if real stuff manifested, they wouldn't even look at it. They'd be looking for like alien spaceships.
Yeah, yeah, and that is exactly that point that I really felt like I hate this so much is when they had the singers and the musicians there, and they actually had something happen and nothing at all. Near the end of the show, they also brought in this guy who was a self-proclaimed CIA agent with his ponytail and the curls that then went on to have his own spin-off show. Now, come on. This guy says he worked for the CIA and he was in on all their secrets, and he is happily blabbing about it despite all the NDAs he probably had to sign on the show. I don't believe you. I just don't. And then later you see him on all other podcasts and talk shows like, yes, I really was a CIA agent, but he never says what he did. Dude probably made coffee.
There was, yeah, they're all full of stories like this. I remember your man David Wilcock years ago on Project Camelot. And do you remember that? And he was claiming that the Illuminati were about to kill him. And he was on with Kerry, what's her name, and screaming and shouting. And they had this guy there pretending to be an Irish Illuminati guy. He was going like, calm down, laddie, calm down. I'm here to, like a leprechaun. I'm here trying to help you. You know, it was absolutely absurd. And yet the comment sections were like, oh God, please protect David from, oh, we all pray together. These people are so gullible, it's frightening.
Yeah, irony be it that those people are the ones that need protection from David.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if there's aliens, they're the ones keeping them away. That's the irony of it. And God help you if you break from the script. That happened to Rosemary Ellen Guiley and John Keel. They needed bodyguards to take them out of UFO conferences when they said it's something else, it's a spiritual force, it's not anything to do with aliens. That's literally what they're like.
Just knowing that is enough to make me believe that it was never aliens to begin with. Just like the things that might have happened on the Skinwalker Ranch, I think that a lot of things get conflated into the Skinwalker phenomenon, which are not actual skinwalkers, because it sounds cool, eh? A skinwalker takes the skin from something and it wears it.
Yeah, it sounds like a black metal band or something, you know, it sounds like something like that. Has Hannibal Lecter overtones, Skinwalkers, you know, what you call the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wearing human flesh. It's a great name. That's another thing when we get our show, we'd have to come up with the right name for it. You know, like the you know, the blood demon or something, the blood alien or something like that. And then once you get, it's a marketing thing. Skinwalker is a very powerful marketing thing.
Yeah. Well, in all truth and honesty, the idea of skinwalking is something that comes back in almost every shamanic culture all over the world. And it's not actually wearing the skin of an animal, although you do or you did in the past.
It'll be a pelt. It'll be the fur of a bear or something.
Yeah, it's just a fur, and also to sort of, imagine yourself as the animal, you to mentally have this sort of visions, like the prey animal is there, the hunter, the dangerous animals are there. This was a useful skill to have overall.
Well, it was a transference kind of thing where you develop, you put yourself into a different state of life in order to deal with like diseases or illness or mental problems that people were having, and you create a kind of a pageant play in the spiritual world that you were a part of. And again, they don't know what I mean. Today, shamanic is someone banging a drum, and these people often would go through tremendous suffering in order to help people and themselves. And this is why this is why shamanism is so, well, not universal, but why it's lasted so long in the cultures it did is because it worked. Because we're learning more and more about things like mental illness may be connected to demons and stuff like that. In fact, I have friends who worked in mental hospitals. They said that's exactly it. He says they are demons. They don't think they can explain it, and the doctors just pump them full of drugs and they make it worse. And that's what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch. It's about something like that, spiritual forces, and these guys are pumping these people full of the viewers with alien drugs to keep them hooked.
I have a similar story about a guy that I only met briefly, but he worked for a heart transplant company, so a medical company. And he said that he had worked together with the FBI in order to solve a murder about a woman who was dead, but the heart of the woman went into another woman. And all of a sudden, that woman started to have flashbacks and dreams with specific phrases that she just plucked out of the ether. And it was because of the things she said that was told to that woman as she was dying that they eventually managed to catch the killer of that girl. Wow. It was a most amazing story.
Cellular memory. It's been known for a long time. Yeah. They start having dreams of the person that they got the organ from.
Yeah. And that guy working for an actual scientific company, it's not a lighthearted thing whatsoever. You need to be very smart and educated in order to work for them. I started talking about Jerry Marzinski too. I said, like, I think this is also the case with mental illnesses, that a lot of it is actually entity attachment without a second of hesitation, that guy agreed, like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And he was not a religious guy, not particularly.
No, I've gotten that from people who work as psychiatric nurses. They said the same thing. Oh, no, definitely you're right. No, and I expect them to turn around and say, oh, no, Thomas, it's not like that at all. You're being, a bit instantaneously they came out with, yeah, in many cases, it's something like that. It's something like a spirit or something. That's what the words they would use. And that's like, that was the fundamental thing of shamanism, was to chase these spirits out. So that would lead me to the suggestion that the land itself around the Skinwalker Ranch, the Sherman Ranch, really needs some kind of spiritual help, almost like a healing. And what's happening right there now is the most monstrous thing of all.
It's I very much had ghost adventure vibes watching the series. They do the exact same thing. And I've looked up people that that show had visited that said like it got so much worse after they left. Like, yeah, I believe it. I absolutely believe that it got worse after that. I think because at the Skinwalker Ranch you had the spiral on the mount, but then you also had the petroglyphs there. Now, I believe those petroglyphs are a bit harder to fake because you have to carve them into the rock, and that takes a lot of skill and effort. I don't think that is fake. I think they're really there. And what I believe is that people, whoever it was, Native Americans, people before them, did something there that wasn't necessarily bad or evil, but they did something there. And that attracted the attention of a lot of entities that may have already existed there, and they started accumulating more in that place. And those entities, they can be good or bad, it doesn't really matter. But I think that those entities and the skinwalker phenomenon, if we at face value take it to be true, I think that is more of a side effect of that that happened there. And you can very much pollute the well in these sort of places. They can very easily be made into this perversion, this perverted, twisted energy that gives you very bad feelings and anxiety, and it just not a wise thing to do in general. It's like our ancestors also, and yours especially in Ireland, they had a sort of understanding with these nature spirits, with fairies. It's like, fine, we can live next to one another, but we don't tread upon each other's territory. Sometimes this goes hand in hand with certain rituals, with offerings even, but we have to maintain this understanding that we can live together as long as certain boundaries are respected. And once they're not respected, then bad things start to happen.
In the past, although it may go on to the present, it's been well known, and it is true, that certain dark occult groups, mainly people with money, do go to megalithic sites or places that have a spiritual power and do their own sort of like dark magic rituals. And they do this for a reason. They believe that by throwing this place, the spiritual balance of this place into chaos, they can harvest much more energy that way. And there are times I was watching that Skinwalker Ranch TV show that I felt like I was looking at a very sophisticated dark magic ritual with a kind of an like the launching of the rocket seemed more like a ritual to me. It could happen so much. It was almost like a consecration of this kind of. Are these people doing this? I don't know, but maybe they could be doing it on behalf of someone else.
I don't know if they did that on behalf of somebody else. I can only tell you that when I saw this Brandon person speak, and later also that CIA guy with the ponytail, I had this very instinctive, I don't trust you feeling.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely don't trust you. I don't believe what's coming out of your mouth.
Well, look at the CIA thing. Either he was never in the CIA, and he's broken every, gag order he signed when he leaves, and why hasn't he been arrested? Or either he was in the CIA and he's deliberately being let out to cultivate this spiritual charge they need for some reason.
That's very possible.
Yeah, and they're using almost like the Skinwalker Ranch as a kind of their own magic circle to get as much energy from the profane poured into as possible. For what reason?
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know, but it could be anything.
No, but I do have an observation. When they were sitting at the table, because they always sit at the table discussing what they're gonna do, and then later the debriefing. That blonde guy that supposedly worked for NASA, the one with the loudest guy that was very into those rockets, he did not seem to take very well to that CIA guy. He never looked at him, not even when that CIA guy was directly speaking to him. It was always in every other conversation, he was very much involved, very enthusiastic. But when that guy was at the table, that guy was sitting like this, almost like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to look at you, like a toddler, almost like, no. And that I found very peculiar.
Very, very interesting. That's a whole other tangent. Like if you're anyone involved in that stuff right now, go and have a look at that. Go look into the person. Who are these people? You know, we never, are they real? Who do they really work for? And have to be involved in anything else. I mean, yeah, again, the way I see it, like, and I know you feel the same way, all this stuff is a big, huge distraction from something that we don't want us to know about. They're harvesting energy and then look over here, but don't look over there. The old trick.
As a person that has experienced entity activity, some of it good, some of it bad, well, good, some of it neutral, let's say, I have never ever experienced something so bad that it had me running for the hills. And I think that had a lot to do with how I was taught to deal with it. I think that had a lot to do with my own reaction to certain things. It's never overreact, never give an emotional reaction, and certainly never, ever panic, ever. And if you can't help yourself and you become so afraid, then just leave well enough alone. It's okay. Some things are not for people. Some places are just for these spirits. And I think as long as we understand that we can live together without much issues, there are certain boundaries we need to respect, and we also need to relearn in a way. No, not in a way, literally. We need to relearn how to live with these things, but they're not, because they're not going away. We are never going to be alone on this earth in a spiritual sense, ever. And be a bit respectful that if you are going around in the open, in nature, in forests, and you suddenly have this feeling like I shouldn't be here, you should just trust that feeling and just leave.
Yeah, just leave and leave respectfully as well. I mean, I've actually had those experiences where I'll say things like, "Who's ever listening to this? I'm sorry for trespassing on this your land, and I respectfully leaving, and I won't tell anybody about this." And that's what I always do. I always tell them, I won't tell anybody about this. You're safe.
Yeah.
And
I think that is how you avoid the attachment that people say, like, oh, something followed me home. Yeah, probably because you were being an ass.
yeah, and they will also attach themselves to objects as well. And that was mentioned in some of the people behind the Skinwalker Ranch initial book and documentary said that they had taken stones from the ranch back to their house, and it started to affect everything in their home, the electromagnetic things, weird dreams, the space-time thing. And I'm like to myself, bring those stones right back now, you know? So the attachments will actually come with physical objects. So that you especially don't bring anything out of the area that was there. That belongs to them. It's not yours to take.
No. No, that's the best. Leave well enough alone.
Leave well enough alone. And I even think there's a certain amount of, I wouldn't say danger, but it's unhealthy to even get addicted to these shows like the Skinwalker Ranch show.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because they are an overload on the senses also. The noise, the editing, it's too much. And I never liked it when I get this sensorial overload. I like my peace and quiet. I don't like to be blown away
And
by
that
noise.
and that place where that ranch is remote and quiet, and it's supposed to be a sanctuary or a grove. And our ancient pagan ancestors would have made a grove of that place and said it's just for the spirits who live there. And since Christian times, that doesn't exist. They think they can trample all over everything. But yeah, that's how I would feel about it. Leave the thing alone. Just leave it alone. So would you agree with me in saying that the Skinwalker Ranch TV series is actually evil?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's sensorial overload, and they always do that for a reason. It's to get you into a certain state, and then whatever you pour out goes into that, I suppose, because you're paying so much attention to it. There are many parts that I had to skip in the series because I can't do it. It's too much.
And that actually goes with couple that with the spiritual damage they're actually doing to the location as well. So you shouldn't be supporting or watching that show. Tina agrees. Only just maybe out of interest, and then leave well enough alone. You got the message, hang up the telephone. Okay, so thanks very much for that, Tina. Yeah, well, I'm glad we're in agreement about it. And hopefully, I think we've given people an education in general about these kinds of TV shows. They may be kind of an adrenaline kind of fun element about them, but you might be actually spiritually damaging yourself. Do you want to leave any information about your own stuff? You got your channel and your runes and things like that?
Oh, well, I have a YouTube channel. I also have a Substack where I put out free articles for everybody to read and comment on. But if you subscribe, you will get a monthly rune reading, a general rune reading for that month. And yeah, that's basically everything.
And it's Tina Kemp on Substack, right?
I will send you the link
Yeah.
to my Substack because I actually don't know.
I will put the link to the Substack because I'm actually more active on Substack now these days than I am on YouTube. I don't know why I love Substack, but I'll put it in the top comment below. That's okay. Thanks very much, Tina. It's great talking to you again, and we'll do other shows like this on these things going forward, if you're up for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and thanks everybody else, and we'll see you next time somewhere. Jack Parsons got me on the moon. Jack Parsons got me on the moon.